incredibly interesting. I mean, there's homework sitting on the desks in school dated that morning, 86. You know, there's dinner on the table, houses. I mean, it's really weird. But it's also, you know, really dangerous. And so we wore these little dosimeters, which are, you know, Geiger counters will detect radiation, and dosimeters will detect your sort of accumulated radiation. It's like a meat spotter. So at a certain point, it tells you when you're done, and you have to leave. So, you know, and it's all like Russian built. Not that this parish anything that's Russian built, but come on. And everyone there is like really flip about the safety. You know, like I would say that we had this guy Yuri, our local kind of Ukrainian safety local guy, and he, you know, I said, Yuri, here's what I need to know. What is the number that pops up on this, or that pops up on this Geiger counter, where I am like never having kids again? Like, what's the number that like I turn around at? You know, and it's like, you know, like you never get an answer on it. So, you know, we wore those things until they, you know, until we were cooked, and we left. And there was a part of me that felt like, God, I never got into that building. I never got into that building. I didn't get to see what was down that street. But at the same time, I remember that night really clearly. It was the quietest investigation we've ever done on the show. Nobody spoke. We were all wearing those Andromeda Strain suits, and it was just really, everybody was freaked out, and also freaked out about the radiation. And at the end of that episode, we peeled off every single thing that we had, you know, had on, and disposed of them. And we drove out of the city, and we found a little motel, and we rented a room. It was only one room for some reason in this place. We rented one room, and all of us, you know, took turns just scrubbing down in the showers, threw all our shoes away. I mean, it just was, you know, I don't think I need to go back and do another round of that. It felt like I got a chance to see it. You can go there now. They're doing day tours there where you can go for a few hours and kind of check it out. I mean, it was really interesting, but it also is just a really sad place. I mean, it's you know, it's a nuclear wasteland. So, you know, I want to go to the Maldives. And,
would you want to take your team to like Pearl Harbor?
I would love to. Yeah, I would love to do that. I mean, Pearl Harbor is an amazing site. It's a very difficult site to, you know, you can't, you have to, the rules for investigating there are very strict, you know. The Ghost Hunter, I was thrilled to go with them because the chance to investigate the hangar was great. But a lot of the main comic sites, sunken boats, none of that, I mean, all of that's off limits. You can't kind of get into all of that. So I would love to go back there. It feels like it would be a difficult place to do a thorough investigation. But I'll take a trip to Hawaii, sure.
Hi, Josh. My name is Beth.
Hi.
You actually mentioned this before, but it's actually one of my favorite episodes because I grew up, my parents telling me that this place, the island is all developed.
Yes.
And you had some crazy experiences, so how did you feel during that whole entire experience?
That place is terrible. The weird thing about it is it's not that hard to get to. You go to Mexico City and there are these old Aztec canals in the city, there's called Xochimilco, and you go there and you can flag down one of these little boat boys, jump on a boat, and they'll paddle you down these canals and take you to that island. And it's not very big, the island either. I think that's one of the things that you don't get a really good sense of the show. The island is bigger than this room, but it's not like, you know, you're not going to get lost on it. But it's exactly as it appears in the show. There's like a gabillion insane dolls, you know, that like you couldn't make it a prop shop for a horror film. Like there's like, you know, like centipedes coming out of their eye sockets, like this insane, you know, like just the fakest stuff you've ever seen. You know, it's a really scary place. And the shack on that island where all the weird stuff happened, where my sound guy went was insane, was terrifying. That little like shack from Lost thing that's there, that was really creepy. I mean, you know, that was a fun night in that everybody was sort of charged up, but it was a really scary location. Open. Yes.
Years previous, when I was younger, I actually saw an investigation on a Spanish channel of that island. And you had the experiences with the doll with the eyes. They had the experience while they were talking, there was a doll hanging in a tree, and they didn't notice at the time, but the doll turned its head to look at them. They didn't notice until they
Maybe
were
that's what the
editing.
river ripped off. jockeying back and forth between that or the Island of the Dolls. And we couldn't decide which one to go back to. Because people always say, you know, you should go back to Chernobyl, you should go back to the Island of the Dolls, or to the Haunted Forest. Let's go back to Chernobyl. So, but I think if we do more, we'll think about going back there and do a follow-up. It's a real, like, fan favorite. People really seem to like that episode. There's nobody else on that island. But the folks that brought us out there, you know, they didn't seem to be hanging around too long. They couldn't believe we wanted to spend the whole night there. They were like, all right, see you in the morning. That's weird. Thank you.
Hello.
Hi.
Have you ever done a have you ever had like a dragon pitch show?
We haven't. You know, I have to say that there's a lot of great myth and lore about dragons, but there are versions of dragons in a bunch of different cultures. But the problem is that we're always looking for stuff on the show that we can tie to current eyewitness experiences, right? We always want to find people who say that they're seeing something currently, they had an experience last week. We just don't hear those kind of stories. We just don't have a lot of folks. If you know of someone who has seen a dragon, I will go investigate. I would love to. I mean, the mythology, you know, of dragons is really, really interesting, actually. But we just haven't had a case where we've had a bunch of eyewitnesses experience that. I'll keep you posted.
Hi. So my interesting, what I'm probably most jealous of when I watch your show is actually the different cultures you get to experience. I myself studied anthropology in college. Nice, you know, but my question is, you know, just kind of from what I've studied, is that at least the footage that we see in the show, the different cultures seem very accepting of your team. I do remember recall one where one of the women of the tribe were very offended by Ryder.
Oh, everybody. every tribe.
You know, she was a woman and not in the appropriate dress. So is there any other, have you had difficulty being accepted by other cultures? Is that like kind of ended it down in the show?
We try really, really hard to ingratiate ourselves everywhere we go. The hardest part about doing that is the speed with which we have to work. In a lot of cultures, you know, when strangers are coming into a community, there's a kind of, you need to take some time with that, and there may be rituals or, you know, kind of sort of cultural things you have to go through. You know, we try to do all of those things, but we're always kind of like, okay, now we need to know, because, you know, we only have a certain amount of time in each place. So I can't really think of, we've certainly never had an experience where things just went south and, you know, the natives were chasing us out of the village. You know, we've had challenges, I think more with kind of government and military institutions than with sort of tribal or small communities, you know, permissions and us bringing night vision equipment into places where that's sensitive. So in some of these former, you know, kind of Cold War era places, that can be a little bit challenging. But for the most part, in any country where we're going to be in an environment where we have to work with a culture that we know very little about and has very different practices, we always kind of have what we call a fixer. You know, we always have this sort of person in the middle who can, you know, make sure that we're doing all the right things. Because there's a lot that you have to do in these places, and a lot, and you know, things like bulkiness and things like that. It's like sometimes you have to eat the crickets, and you have to, you know, drink the blood and do these things that you don't want to do, because if you don't, it's offensive. You know, and so we try really hard to make the best impression we can to be good ambassadors, both for Travel TV and for America, and so, you know, every once in a while it gets a little sticky, but for the most part, I think